Yeah. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeremy England. I'm a senator, represent District 51, and I have been appointed by the Lieutenant Governor to this commission. To my right here is Representative Jansen Owen. He is the Speaker's appointment to the commission, and we use this room regularly. So I'm going to go over some technical points for you so that we can, all be on the same page. Of course, we all have microphones, or we don't all have microphones. We have microphones to share, which gets tough for legislators in here because we all like to have our own microphone. But you'll see there's a red, if your microphone is not turned on, it will be red at the bottom. If you push the push button to talk, you'll see like mine, you'll have the green light come on, and that helps everyone to be able to hear. It also will allow you to be heard on the streaming of this meeting, which is streaming online. And let me also mention, while I'm talking about online, I understand we have some people joining us by Zoom. And if anyone would like to speak from Zoom, that is okay, but I'm going to ask you to take down my cell phone number so that you can text me when you want to be recognized to speak. That way I can make sure to get it, because we have screens in here in the room, but it's tough to see maybe if you want to raise your hand on the screen like you usually would in a regular Zoom meeting. But please take down this number. My cell phone number is 228-219-1180, and I have that here with me now. We have also Commissioner Andrea Sanders sitting up here with us, who helped get this meeting together and helped to get the agenda together. But what I want to do first is maybe go through and introduce ourselves, what we're doing here, and then I'm going to recognize Andrea to make some opening remarks as well on this. As I said, my name is Jeremy England. I'm a senator, represent District 51, which is Jackson County. I live down in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. I'm an attorney by trade. I do mainly workers' comp defense work, but I have very good relationships with our youth court judges, and I've had my hand in some legislation here that we've been able to do some things. And so I'm very honored to be a part of this commission, learning and hearing from everyone, and also making sure we can do what's best for the state of Mississippi here. Next, I'll turn it over to you, Jason.
Thank you, and thank you and welcome. As Senator England said, my name is Representative Jansen Owen. I was appointed by the Speaker to this commission. I represent Pearl River and Lamar counties in the House of Representatives. That's District 106. I'm an attorney by trade. I went to Tulane and I practice in Circuit Chancery Youth Courts down in the 10th Chancery District, 15th Circuit Court District. I'm traditionally in front of Judge Lumpkin, used to be in front of Judge Touchstone a lot. Since elected, youth court has been one of the things I've worked on. I've worked with Commissioner Sanders on a lot. She's doing a wonderful job. So I suspect that we're going to be following her guide throughout this process. So welcome to your capital, and I look forward to the work we're going to do on this commission.
Hi, I am Andrea Sanders, and I'm the Commissioner of Child Protection Services. I am also an attorney and also a master's level social worker, closing in on 3 years as the Commissioner of Child Protection Services, and have sort of a mixed bag of experience in the private and public sector. Prior to that, I don't know why I'm up here at the front table, and we put together an agenda really in the vein of I have support staff and we wanted to get this rolling and get it organized. But this is our commission, not any one particular entity's commission. Our interest in the youth court is tremendous because it really has a strong bearing on all of our work and whether we're successful. So thank you. I look forward to serving with each of you.
Hey, how you doing? Sheriff Troy Peterson. I'm from Harrison County.
Good afternoon. I'm Shonda Kirksey. I was appointed by the Mississippi Department of Child Protection Services. I'm Assistant Deputy Commissioner for Safety, which is our investigation unit. and I've been in child welfare for 27 years.
Hi, I'm Abby Young. I'm Assistant Deputy Commissioner for Wellbeing and Permanency, which was what you would consider the foster care side of things, in the northeast corner of the state.
One more time.
Except the online maybe. I'm Gerald Martin. I'm the Chancery Judge from the 13th Chancery District.
Bob Anderson, I'm the Executive Director at Mississippi Department of Human Services. We have kind of the juvenile delinquency side of the youth court docket because we have the Division of Youth Services, obviously is under our umbrella, I guess is the best way to say it. I'm sort of a lawyer in suspense right now. I've been out of the courtroom for about 6 years now, in various leadership roles, first at Medicaid and now at MDHS, former prosecutor primarily.
Hello, my name is Vicki Lowry, and I serve as General Counsel for Child Protection Services. There we go. I've got a green button now. I'm Renee Porter, and I am the youth court referee in Marion County, have been for a couple of years. But prior to that, I was involved in youth court as guardian ad litem for over 10 years. I'm a practicing attorney, mainly minimizing my practice now, concentrating on the youth court work. I have previously been a prosecutor, but I've been practicing for 34 years.
I'm Joseph. I'm counsel to the governor. I'm here in my individual capacity, not as a representative of the governor's office. I always say that. So when I speak, I'm speaking for me. I don't speak for the governor unless I say I speak for the governor. I practiced law for 24 years, circuit judge for a year, and I've been with the office for 5 years now.
I'm Ryan Brule. I'm the referee for Walthall County. I've been practicing pretty much 12 years in youth court prior to becoming referee, and I also have a private practice.
Good afternoon, Brad Touchstone, Circuit Judge for the 15th Judicial District. I'm a former county and youth court prosecutor, I got a lot of former legislator, former county court judge. Good to be with y'all.
My name is Stacy Bevel. I am the County Court Youth Court Judge in Lee County, Mississippi. I practiced for a little over 20 years before I took the bench in 2019, and hail from Tupelo area, and very excited to be here.
Stacy O'Neill from Madison County, County Court Judge, Youth Court. And before getting on the bench, I was a guardian ad litem and a defense attorney for delinquency and defense attorney for parents. Pretty much did everything in youth court before getting on the bench.
Okay, thank you and welcome everybody. Like I said, when we first started, I look forward to serving with everyone on this commission. I do see that we need to have an election of a commission secretary, and I understand that's one of our more important jobs. One, you can make sure we're all here when you need to make sure that we are, but also if we take any minutes or anything. So what I would like to do now is accept any nominations. You can nominate yourself, but if anyone's willing to serve in that capacity, it would certainly be appreciated. You'll take, okay, thank you, Judge Stacy, one of our Judge Stacys, right? We have a Judge Stacy in Jackson County too, so I think it's a, you know, I don't know if we're going to get that into the rules that, you know, must be named or nicknamed Stacy. We'll just go with it. Thank you. Yes, Jason.
Your mic's
Pursuant to the statute, there is a requirement that we elect officers of this commission. I'm assuming we need a chair, a vice chair, and that's probably it. I'm not sure. And it also requires that we adopt the rules and regulations of how we want to do our meetings and how we want to make decisions. There are some statutory requirements. I know for a quorum, the statute says that we have to have at least 12 members present, but to give a recommendation to the legislature, there has to be at least 14 votes. Since the goal of this commission is to provide a recommendation to the legislature, I am not going to stand as in an officer position. So I think since they're recommending to us that we probably need to let someone out there stand for.
I move to elect Brad Touchstone as the chairman and Stacy Bevel as the co-chair or the vice chair.
I would second the motion if we're doing Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay, so yeah, so I will, yeah, I guess as acting temporary chair to start the meeting, I will recognize that we have a motion made for Brad Touchstone for chairman, and what was Stacy's last name? Sorry, Stacy Bevel. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, let's take these one at a time, and let's nominate a chairman and get a chairman rolling, and then I will maybe relinquish this seat to that chairman, and we can move forward that way. Are there any other nominations for chairman of the commission? No? Okay, seeing none, would you like to speak on behalf of your nomination, or would Mr. Touchstone like to speak? Or okay. Okay, I'll recognize the motion. We have a motion on the table, or have a motion before us now to nominate Mr. Brad Touchstone as chairman of the commission. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Touchstone, if you would like to, I'm going to let you have this seat unless you'd like me to keep rolling for today. I'm happy to do it. Yep. And look, this a lot of times is how we, I mean, you know this, how we do this in the legislature too. Business is the most important, you know, and if we need to get to the Robert's rules, we can do all that. But congratulations on your nomination and your appointment by this commission to be the chair. Next, we have Judge Stacy Bevel as we have a nomination for her to serve as vice chairman. Are there any other nominations from the commission? Would anyone like to speak on behalf of Ms. Bevel? All right, seeing none, we'll move into a vote. All in favor of Ms. Bevel, as Judge Bevel as vice chairman, say aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay, Judge Bevel, congratulations on being vice chairman, and gonna move. And look, I'm not as great with names, but my other Judge Stacy last name. O'Neill, okay. And so Judge O'Neill, you will serve as secretary, which, I'm sorry.
I've never done this before, but I'm going to do my best.
Okay, well.
Unless somebody
you-
else really wants to. Do we have any court reporters in here?
Well, here's the thing too. We do have, you know, we're streaming this meeting. It's available for us to go back to if we need to. Primarily, I know on legislative committees and commissions, the secretary's job is if we have a vote, the secretary will, if we have a vote that comes into a hand vote, you would do the counting. You'll just make sure we've got quorum and things like that. So
See who's on Zoom.
yes. Yeah, if anyone, and I didn't see any nominations from Zoom, and what I figured we could do since we didn't get nobody chimed in to speak from Zoom. If they do want to speak later, they can introduce themselves. It looks like we have a Will, is that Will Crossley, and then Michael is that Bradford? Breland? Michael Breland, okay. And welcome to those two gentlemen. If they have anything they'd like to say, please just text me and let me know. Yes, Judge.
Also would like to say that Joey Cobb is also part of this as the acting chairman of the Youth Court Council. And he is sick. He called me this morning. He wasn't able to travel. So,
Okay, well, I hope he gets
and
better
probably not
soon.
able to be online either.
Right, yeah. Didn't vote on you yet? Okay. Okay, so Judge Stacey O'Neill was nominated earlier for secretary, and we did not vote on that position. Are there any other nominations for that position? Seeing none, all in favor of Judge O'Neill serving as secretary, say aye. Any opposed, say no. Congratulations, Judge O'Neill. So that was great. Great job as a secretary, making sure we came back and got that taken care of. What I'm going to do next, since I'm sitting up here as chairman for today with this agenda that the commissioner has prepared for us, the commissioner has next an overview of HB 1149, which I'm sure you've looked at and are ready to move forward with. And if you are, I would recognize you to kind of make some remarks on that.
I don't know that I have anything to add to the House bill. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We just put together a quick summary. And I think that it's pretty clear what our charge is. We have to answer some threshold questions and objectives. So unless there are questions, I don't have anything to add.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there anyone else that would like to add to the topic of HB 1149? Okay, seeing none, what I would say, number one, it's an honor to serve on this commission. It's very important that we come out of this commission with in my opinion, some uniform set of rules like we have in other courts that we look at, that we follow, that makes things a little easier to do. And with that being the case, we can also, we're gonna hold hearings. I understand we're doing this until October of 2024, so we don't have to have something today that's in stone, obviously. But as we get rolling and get closer to October of 2024, hopefully we've got an idea of what we would like to turn over to the legislature for members like Jansen and myself to take a look at. And I will say on other commissions, we take these very seriously when we're trying to decide what rules to adopt. I see that we have our duties. I'll just state this for everyone. It's right in front of us, but for those listening that may be listening at home or maybe joining us by Zoom, our duties are to study the youth court system and submit a report for improvement by October 1st of 2024, including any legislation needed to implement the plan. So as we get moving, we will have that to present. Things that we're going to consider, and Commissioner, I'm reading this off of your agenda, by the way, but we'll just get it out here for us. Would a uniform statewide system be desirable? I think that's probably going to be one topic that we end up debating heavily in here. I understand that currently there may be different jurisdictions that may be doing things differently, and whether that's helpful, what's not helpful. As long as we all work together and we keep focused on the primary goal is that we need the best working youth court system that we can have in Mississippi as it relates to our children, as it relates to our judges, to the folks that practice in front of the judges, and to the parents. So keeping all of that in mind as we move forward. How best do we service those needs? Can counties in a given service area or district develop shelter, detention centers, and diagnostic centers to serve multi-county areas? And to add on to that, I'll say that one thing that the Lieutenant Governor and I have talked about that's a very important thing for him is with regards to human trafficking. And I have spoken with our sheriff, I'm down around the I-10 area. Sheriff, you're have served down there as well. Human trafficking is a big issue there. And a lot of times those are children that end up in a situation where they've been told one thing or another to say. And how do we help those children out? I think is something that we can look at. I know the Lieutenant Governor would be glad to assist and hear us address that. Also, what would modernize the system to provide staffing for all counties and citizens? Is there anyone that would like to speak about what they hope to see happen with this commission and how we move forward here for our first meeting? Commissioner, do you have anything you would like to add?
I do. I would just urge this body to really carefully consider the work that's done in youth courts. It's specialized work, it's niche work. And I would argue that it requires someone who really specializes in that work. It also is work that we're messing around in people's families. Our work is to go into the homes of people who've allegedly neglected or harmed their children. We walk inside the threshold of their door. I consider that sacred space inside somebody's family home. And we go in and we judge their parenting. So it's extremely important. What we do is invasive. It's necessary because kids get hurt behind closed doors in their homes. But it's also necessary that we only take children when it's absolutely necessary to protect them, to protect their safety, because we know it does a lot of harm when we remove children from a home. And it's also necessary that we only keep them in state custody the number of days that are required to keep them safe, because a big lumbering state agency is never going to be a good substitute for a family. We're working harder every day to do a better job with the children while we have them, but children who linger in custody longer than absolutely necessary, I would argue that we end up doing more harm with those kids. So it's important that the youth court meet on a regular basis. And then from my perspective as a consumer of the courts across the state as a whole, it's really important that we have some consistency to what that looks like. I am trying to train a workforce in a very high-risk job that has high stakes. And so while I don't so much care what the court looks like, having a consistent court across the state in all 82 counties is, I think, vital for us to get the kind of outcomes that we need so that children and families can thrive. And that's pretty much my pitch. And I'm here to answer questions about our work and how it's impacted by the disparity in types of courts across the state. But, that's our perspective.
Thank you, Commissioner. And look, while you were speaking, I was writing down some of these as maybe goals that we can discuss today of what we want to come to look at. And I wrote down that one of our goals, keep children safe, but understand that custody is not always the best or preferred method. That can maybe be one of our charges as we're going forward, looking at that and ideas towards that. Also for youth court to meet on a regular basis, which I think is something important for us to look at. Would anyone else like to add anything? Yes.
Yep.
You're recognized.
Bob Anderson from MDHS. I just will speak from my perspective and again, the delinquency side of the docket's what we see the most, but I agree exactly completely with what Andrea says. We need a statewide system. We need, I respect, I appreciate, I applaud the lawyers who step up and serve as referees. They're filling a gap that is sorely needed to be filled. But I think we would all agree, those of us who deal with the youth court system regularly, that it would be a major improvement if each county either had its own youth court judge or at least had access to a youth court judge. And I want to just mention, I know some of you may have had a chance to review what I thought was a very good proposal that former Chief Justice Waller brought to the legislature. I don't remember how many years ago it was now, 3 or 4 years ago. It provided for a statewide youth court system, although some of the smaller counties obviously didn't have the docket really to support a full-time judge. And so Sharkey, Issaquena, and some other smaller counties shared a youth court, but they all had access to a youth court. And I think at a bare minimum, we as a commission, this commission should be striving so that, you know, toward every county having access to a youth court system. I want to just mention too, before we get too far engaged, I'm probably going to cede my seat the next time this group meets. I have a deputy executive director named Rochelle Richardson, who has 9 years of experience as a youth court prosecutor in Rankin County. And she's our deputy over both youth services as well as child support. And she has a lot of, the phrase we use these days, lived experience in the youth court system. And so, and that's a word I think we should keep in mind. Look at the lived experience, both that lawyers and that families and that we as agencies have in the youth court system. I heard somebody say the other day that, and you're right, Andrea, children don't fare well when they stay in child welfare for a long time. And a fully statewide functioning youth court system, I think, helps us to move toward those goals of permanency or reunification, whatever that looks like. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. I think, yeah, Judge, I'm going to recognize you, and then I'll got you, Representative Owen.
Just a few comments. I would like to see us start from a point of gathering objective data and subjective data. We all come from practicing youth court in our own county. Maybe a few of us have experience in several counties, but you know, we all have subjective opinions about how things are, how things should be. But I think it would do us in good stead to really look at objective data, look at numbers of cases, look at numbers of referrals, look at timelines, how, you know, how long does it take? And as judges, we have access to my kids. I would like to ask AOC if they would, for me, give me access to a little, the one thing I can't do right now, I can see every youth court case in the state if that child shows up in my courtroom, but what I can't do is run reports about numbers. I do that on my own county, and I do that every month, trying to really get a picture of statistics. But I can't do that statewide, and I think somebody needs to look at that objective data in a way that we can report it, not kids' names or individual people, but just the numbers about referrals and cases and timelines. And I think that's where we ought to start, however we accomplish that.
Yeah, thank you, Judge O'Neill. And I think that's an excellent point. And again, we've been tasked to serve on this commission until October of 2024. And it's going to be up to us to call people to talk. And Judge Hudson, you can do this as chairman. We can have hearings. We can discuss that. We can ask peer or anyone else we need to help us gather data on this. But I do think that's important. And that is what we're going, it's my understanding that's what we're here to do. And we would be remiss to try to create any rules or guidelines without doing that first. So I think that may be, I would be up to the chairman to do that, but I think that would be a good way to start maybe with our next meeting moving forward with information to do that. Representative Owen, you had.
Thank you, Senator. Moving forward, I would just like us to start from a level of realizing that, I've heard us talk about our youth court system and the uniformity of it. I just want us to realize that every child has access to a youth court right now as it stands under the current law, whether it be a chancery court with a referee system or whether it be a county court. We do have a youth court in every county in this state. If there are issues with that system, I would like us to come at this with a mindset of how can we fix this current system as opposed to just jumping in with looking at some transformative major reforms. That's just, I feel like legislative wise, the legislature always likes to exercise some restraint when it comes to implementing major reforms, particularly those types of reforms that would cost an exceptional amount of money. It's really hard to make them spend money on anything sometimes, unless you don't need it. Another thing I want to point out while the commission, the deadline for us is October of 2024, I don't want anything that's presented in October 2024, we can't put into legislation until the 2025 legislative session. So I don't want us to work at this thinking that we can't put forward recommendations before our next session. There may be some reforms that we can go ahead and make a determination before December that we can put into policy in the next session. So I don't want us to go in here thinking we've got a year or more to do this work. There are issues that Commissioner Sanders is having that we could fix in January or February as opposed to waiting a year. So I just don't want us to see that October 2024 date and think we can't do anything before then.
Thank you, Representative Owens. Judge Bevel?
I would also like to, in our upcoming Youth Court Judges Conference, which is September 13th through 15th, do a fact gathering survey from where we sit right now. We could take time during that session to fill out maybe a Google form or something, but I think it's important for us to find out who all is where, what they're doing, what their numbers look like, what they need, what they don't need, and get the judge's perspective, because that is very important to me going forward. And I would like to take the opportunity to do that in our conference. I also would like to say that one of the things that is very important to me is the increase of education of the youth court judges. We do not meet but one time a year, and we have a day and a half of meeting time, and that is inadequate. I don't care if you're a referee, a county court judge, you're asking us to do all of this work, no matter who you are, and I do not believe we're getting the adequate time, not even to be educated, but to be around each other and to talk about our issues. So that is something I think that maybe we can address short term.
Thank you, Judge. And I've got, and we go first name Gerald.
Yes.
You're recognized, yes.
I want to share the perspective that's very different from Judge O'Neill and Judge Bevel. They represent much larger counties by obviously the fact they're big enough to have county court judges and to need county court judges. All of my 5 counties are very rural. I share some with Judge Touchstone. I dare say the 2 that we share are the most rural of his counties. He has some larger ones and smaller ones. All of mine are smaller counties. I can assure you, if you come forward with a county court system, all 5 of my counties, from the Chancery Clerk to the Board of Supervisors, will be ringing the phone of their senators and representatives and opposing it. They have every time it's been brought up because of the sheer cost of it to the counties. We don't need a county court judge in my counties for the better part. We work with referees. The running joke is if we have a county court judge, well, that'll solve the youth court problem. And then what are the circuit judges going to do? Because when you take out all cases within county court jurisdiction and all the misdemeanor appeals and et cetera out of our circuit system, that narrows down greatly the cases that aren't being removed to federal court as far as what's going to be tried in the circuit court. I let Judge Touchstone make and better advise that, but that's sort of the perspective of it. And from the county's perspective, creating that, you've not only got to fund the judge, but you've got a court reporter, you've got a court administrator, you've got to have bailiffs, you've got to have courtroom. Judge Touchstone and I share courtrooms in the two counties that we're in. And we only, in particular, in one of them, we have one courtroom shared between 5 circuit and chancery judges. There are a few weeks out of the year left over that we're not there, but in the way our terms run, either myself or the other chancery judge is there ideally every other month. Whenever they come in with a 2 or 3 week circuit term, it gets difficult for us to schedule, but we manage to play nice and work together and work our scheduling out. But when you start taking out the holiday weeks and the judges conference weeks out of our term, and not looking at the rest of the time we're available to have court, there's not enough courtroom space in most of my counties to add a county court judge if they want to have court more than 2 days a month. And some months they wouldn't be able to. In some of the counties, the other chancery judge and I end up having to kind of go back to back because there'll be a 4-week or a 6-week circuit term that has wiped out the courtroom. So now the county has to go build at least another courtroom in a building somewhere, or convert a building, or buy or build a building to put a courtroom. So if you're headed toward a statewide, everybody's going to have a county court and we're going to combine these 2 counties for one and these 3 counties for one, my personal opposition to it is the last legislation I saw would have my 5 counties spread across 3 different chancery judges that dip into other districts. And now you have lawyers who generally are not practicing in my district that may come in as a county court judge elected from some other area. And now my local bar is having to practice before them and we're having to work together. You're just adding something else in the mix that personally doesn't work for me, but also doesn't work for my bar. But like I said, before you get to any of that, every time it has come up, all 5 of my counties, all 5 of my chancery clerks, as far as I know, all of my sheriffs and circuit clerks have been opposed to the creation of a county court system within their counties, primarily based on cost, but also just based on inefficiency. Works wonderful in a bigger county, doesn't so much work in the rural county. So now that I've gummed up everything, I'll be quiet.
Thank you, Gerald. Yes, going to recognize the gentleman here. And if you'll tell me your name one more time, I know we're going to all have to get to know each other.
It's Ryan Brule. I'm one of the
right.
referees from Walthall County.
Ryan, you are recognized.
Thank you, sir. I just want to echo kind of Judge Bevel's comments. I would urge the body here to please help us identify what specific problems you're having in the existing courts. We cannot address what we don't know about. I urge you that if I am having a problem in mine, or if Judge Porter's having one in hers, please identify those so that we can attempt to address those. Because I know we have this need for consistency, or maybe that's been identified as what may be a problem, but as a practicing attorney, I've practiced in 2 or 3 different circuit districts and 2 or 3 different chancery districts, including Judge Martin's and Judge Touchstone's. And while those guys are wonderful jurists, they're as different as Debbie Alford. Judge Martin is as different as you could imagine than Judge Alford, who is a big fan of mine and I'm a big fan of hers. Judge Touchstone is nothing like Judge Strong or Judge Taylor. So the consistency that I'm wondering is the problem. I just wonder if that's what consistency, what does that mean? Because it there's no consistency in Chancery and Circuit now, other than the same laws are applied by human beings that we all are. And I'd like help with that, because I think that Judge Bevel and I have had several discussions where we can address that as a conference on, as youth court judges. We can help with that without destroying a system. From the perspective of problems, if we have judges that are not doing their jobs, I have a problem with that if that's the case, because as a chairman of judicial performance, I'm not receiving those type of complaints. We would need to know if we have jurists that are not fulfilling the jobs that they're asked to do.
Yeah, thank you. Judge Touchstone, you're recognized.
Just briefly, kind of thinking about where we go from here. Today, I kind of view this meeting as organizational in nature. How are we going to fulfill the duties that the legislature has put upon us as a commission? And I agree with most all of the comments that have been made, but I'm thinking just from an organizational administrative standpoint, that we look specifically at these duties that are enumerated in this code. For instance, the very first one, would a uniform statewide system be desirable? So we're charged with looking at the system. I think it operates under the premise that it is not uniform. So I think the first thing we need to talk about as a commission is, number one, in what ways is the system currently uniform? Frankly, I think, as Representative Owen said, there's a lot of issues where there are uniformity. We all use My Kids. We all use the same rules. So I don't think we need to gloss over the ways that uniformity exists. But perhaps at our next meeting, we all try to come together on ways that the system is not uniform. Clearly, the legislature believes it lacks uniformity. So let us talk about what that means, what lack of uniformity exists, what, to Judge Bevel's point, what data do we need to determine whether or not that lack of uniformity means worse outcomes. And finally, I think once we do that, we can start talking about what structural changes are needed in the system to affect more desirable outcomes. So I think it'll be important for us to really go in order here so we don't get the cart in front of the horse. And another idea, the elephant in the room is the uniform statewide system. That's been brought up. I think it was brought up my first year in the legislature. It's been an elephant in the room for many years. And I envision that's going to take up a lion's share of our discussion and our time. But there are other duties enumerated in the statute that we're also required to analyze that touch on a lot of the things the commissioner talked about, how to best service the needs of the citizens that we're serving. So I want to make sure we don't neglect these other issues that we're charged to look at by getting bogged down in this court system. So it may be a good idea to even look at subcommittees to divvy up these responsibilities, just so we're certain that we don't focus all of our time and attention on that one issue. I mean, personally, for me, I view this new role as simply helping run the meeting. I'm disinterested at this point as circuit judge, but I think like everybody here, whatever we want to do, we want to improve outcomes. But I think that starts with what many of you have said. We got to figure out what's not uniform. What data do we need to support whether or not that lack of uniformity is affecting our outcomes, and then talk about solutions.
Yeah, thank you, Judge Touchstone. Yes.
I want to echo what Judge Touchstone just said. I view this as two separate things. I view the first charge as focusing on the structural element of the courts. Do we want to keep what I call at least a 2 or 3 tiered structure of our youth courts, or do we want to have one uniform youth court in the state? And if we do, what does that structure look like? That's one question. The second question is more what Commissioner Sanders was hitting on. Once we decide what the court's going to look like, what are the procedures and the rules that are going to be applied uniformly across that court system. And I think part of our challenge is Newell v. State, where the Supreme Court has carved out their part of this in terms of procedural rules, but there's still some rules in terms of structure that the legislature plays a role in. And I think those are the recommendations that this committee would be charged with, is what statutory changes to the procedures in the court would be desirable. So I agree with what Judge Touchstone said. I think two subcommittees, one on the focusing on the structure. Do we want a uniform court? And if we do, what should the structure look like? And then one that looks at the efficiencies or the workings of the court once we decide would be a desirable way to organize.
Thank you. And look, before I recognize anyone else, I just want to say to our members attending by Zoom, and look, it's going to be very difficult to do this, but we all live in this era now where we have to deal with Zoom. Mr. Crosley, if you are there and would like to unmute, or I guess, Carlos, would you need to unmute him so he can speak? Okay, everyone, Carlos is our technical advisor, supervisor, guru here that will help us a lot. But Mr. Crosley, if you're available and would like to speak, I'm going to wait about 10 seconds to see if you can unmute yourself before I move on.
Good afternoon. Hopefully you can hear me. My name is Will Crossley. I'm president of the Pineywood School off Highway 49. And so I'm also, by way of training and trade, an attorney who's now been doing this work for about the past 10 years, but practicing law for about 21 years. And so I've just been listening and learning from the conversation and in agreement with much of what's been said, but look forward to contributing in any manner in which we can going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Crossley. And glad to have you on board with the commission as well. Mr. Breland, if you're available, I'm going to wait 10 seconds and allow you to chime in if you can.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Breland. I'm the prosecutor at the Jackson County Youth Court. I have been serving in that capacity for over 18 years now. And really don't have anything further to add at this point, but I look forward to serving on this committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Breland, and I appreciate both of you attending by Zoom. Glad you had a chance to speak as well. And again, if you would like to speak again while we're here meeting today, if you'll text me, I will say that's always a lot easier. And Judge Touchstone, when he's running the meetings in the future, may want to do this the same way, to have you text, because it's really hard for us to see the screen in here to recognize you. Yes, Gerald, will recognize you for some comments.
I just wanted to add one more thing that I would like for us to look at, and it's something that without a doubt the legislature can certainly help with, and without getting a lot of your members phone calls from their local constituents. Commissioner Sanders has certainly received much additional funding, and her department is operating better than what I've seen in the past, and they're improving. Mr. Anderson, with youth services out in these rural counties, we depend on CPS and youth services, and for that matter, the truancy officers through the Department of Education as far as serving in our youth courts. That's one of the huge differences between me sitting or one of my referees sitting, or Judge O'Neill, Judge Bevel, or one of the other county court judges. The larger counties typically fund a number of positions within the youth court and provide resources to that youth court. Even when I'm sitting there as the chancery judge and coming in and doing a youth court hearing, I am fully dependent, other than a local deputy, on state employees to to help that court function. And they, DHS Youth Services is woefully underfunded as far as being able to pay their people and being able to keep staffing. I don't have youth services officers available in all of my 5 counties on any given, I shouldn't say any given day, they're never there on any given day. But even in any given month, I may or may not have a youth services officer. I may have a supervisor coming in covering 1 day or 2 days a month. And so they're not able to go out and keep up with our kids and keep, if they're on probation, we don't have anybody to go to the school to keep up with them, to, are they attending? What are their grades? What's going on? To check on their households, to do anything. We don't have, those options. In the past, when my former or my late partner was the youth court referee for 2 or 3 counties in our district, back in the early 90s, he had 2 full-time youth services officers that worked within just some of our counties, not all of our counties. And they took care of those things and they kept up with it. We don't have that, and it bogs down. I've had just in the last week, 2 different counties. One, the Chancery clerk called and said, I got to looking and we've only had 3 truancies filed this calendar year. Well, it's a function of they've gone a long time without a truancy officer. The sheriff from one of my other counties called me this week while talking to one of the local school officials about some problems they were having in one of the schools. And he said, well, according to the school, I honestly don't remember whether he was referring to the absenteeism rate or the attendance rate. Either way, it was 62%. And the easy answer is your truancy officer retired and another one got promoted and you've got somebody new and they haven't done anything. And nothing's being brought forward on that. Youth court is the referees, the chancery judges, the county court judges. None of us can go out and bring people to us. Somebody has to bring them. And in particular, out in the rural counties, that is wholly dependent upon state resources. We don't have county appointed people to go out. There are no full-time staff from a county perspective handling youth court. That is one thing the legislature could work wonders on, whether it's creating additional sorts of help in each of these youth courts through state-funded positions that that cover 1, 2, 3 counties, whatever, or just putting additional resources and them being Mr. Anderson being able to pay his staff a competitive salary to keep them, so that we have a youth services officer who's there on a regular basis and with us for more than a few months and available in the county to meet with people more than 1 or 2 days or 3 days a month. You can't keep up with a volume of children that way. And one last comment, we were talking about My Kids and data. As someone who has managed to avoid having a My Kids key but still does youth court, they scan all of my orders back into the My Kids system. When I had a referee have some health issues in January, I was covering that docket. And I quickly discovered that the intake officer, who is preached to about their My Kids numbers out of Rex and everybody with that system and trying to make sure everything gets done, she realized that everything she's scanning in for me, something I already knew, none of that is getting recorded in the My Kids system. It's the flaw in the system, and they've known about it. And the county court judges, before some changes were made, several of them took the position, if I don't sign an order in ink, it's not a valid order. And this is years ago. And I remember them asking, if you're going to sign it in ink, please also do it in the My Kids key, because we don't get that information if it's signed and scanned in. And when this young lady realized that all of her numbers were being messed up by every order I signed, because forever and ever, it looks like nothing was done on that case in the My Kids system. In the data reporting end of it, it's all there if you go look at it. But as far as data collection, it never shows up. I wondered why things had suddenly slowed down. And she's like, oh, well, I've got all of our referees are authorized to cover all of our counties. And she said, I've called another referee to come in and see about that, because you're messing up my numbers. So those are the sorts of things that some state funding could work miracles out in the rural areas without huge structural changes to the court system itself.
Thank you, Judge O'Neill.
Just to piggyback on what he just said, that the hiring process for us to get a new DYS worker, and I guess maybe a new CPS worker too, is extremely slow. More so, I've noticed it on the DYS side because they're having to go through the state personnel board. Literally, if I have a DYS worker leave, I'm not getting somebody to fill that spot for at least 6 months. And nobody has 6 months to wait around for a job. And, you know, I understand that part of that, it's not necessarily DHS's fault. It is not the local people, that the bureaucracy to fill a position is unnecessary. And, you know, you're talking about people, and I know they've gotten a pay raise recently, but there's an employment shortage in Mississippi. That's a problem. And we are competing, I mean, our youth courts through the state agencies are competing for the people out there looking for jobs. And if you've got to get a master's degree to fill a spot that's going to pay you, I don't know what the salary is now, but it's not enough to pay your school loans. And you've got to wait 3 to 6 months before you can start the job. Nobody has that kind of time to wait around for a callback. It's just the bureaucracy. So I think if we're going to have a uniform system, we're going to need to have uniform workers in the field, that we have no control over them. I mean, in Madison County, yeah, I do have some county employees, but we went almost a year without a single DYS worker. And if it hadn't have been for my county employees crossing over and doing stuff that really wasn't their job, we couldn't have had youth court. I mean, not the way that the kids are entitled to have. So if whatever structure we end up recommending, if we don't figure out a way to also solve the problem of all the vacancies that take a long time to get filled, then we're not really going to fix anything. So.
Thank you, Judge. And before I'll get back, Commissioner Sanders, I did want to give you an opportunity. If you wanted to speak about the Casey Foundation, do you want to speak to that now, or do you want me to take these questions and then just come back to you? But I definitely want to give you the opportunity to do that while we're here. Okay. Well, let me go to Mr. Anderson, and then Judge Bevel will also come back to you. I think we've got a good discussion going, but I did want to make sure that I mentioned that to you and got that through.
Yeah,
Mr. Anderson.
I just wanted to follow up on what Judge O'Neill was saying. This whole youth services counselor hiring process is probably the most frustrating for all of us because it is so slow. It's the only really kind of hybrid hiring process that I know of in our agency. And, you know, the personnel board has tried to speed it up, but speeding it up has gotten it to 3 months instead of 6 months. And that's not very fast these days. I agree with you. We have many times gone through the whole process of recruiting a position, doing interviews, offering the job, only to learn that the employee to whom we offered it before they could come to work was taking another job. And all that does is restart the clock and we start all over again. I don't know what the answer is. I have said to my friend Judge Hudson, you know, if the AOC wants to take on youth services workers, we'd be glad for them to come under their supervision. He has not seemed too terribly interested in that idea, but you know, they would be part of the court system if that were true, like a bailiff or you know, a courtroom clerk or whatever, Judge Martin. And yeah, it is a slow process. We did, thanks to CPS's efforts to get social worker salaries increased. We got a good increase. We were able to piggyback on that. But yeah, it's still lagging behind most of the states around us, and we would like to see the salaries. We created a first-time career ladder payment plan for our eligibility staff. I would love to see a true career ladder for these youth services counselors, so that when they come to work for us, we can tell them what their potential salary increases look like in 2 years and 4 years and 6 years. We're working on that. We're working toward that, but we're just not there yet. I want to add one other thing. It's not actually on the things we're supposed to consider, but I'm going to throw it out here because we've been up here, and I think Senator England, you probably have seen the bill come across once or twice. I know we've proposed about 3 years in a row some community-based services. The AOP is what we called it, Adolescent Opportunity Programs, community-based care, so that we don't have to, Judge Martin, we don't have to find, additional detention centers and have, full-blown court functions if we have community options to refer youth court either on the delinquency side or on the child welfare side of the docket. And it's needed. And I think particularly from the standpoint of mental health being a part of a lot of the youth court docket involves young people with mental health issues that need community-based care. I'm just going to throw that into the mix, and I know it's not strictly part of our charge, but I think a youth court system to function fully and as effectively as we all would like it to should take into consideration where does community-based care fit in. Community-based care is certainly top of mind for our mental health department, and I think it should be top of mind for our youth court system as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Yeah, okay, Judge Bevel, and then we'll get.
One thing I want us to remember from this point forward, and y'all already know this, but you wouldn't be sitting in this chair if you didn't care about a child. Everybody here, no matter what your view is going to be, at the end, we're all going to walk out of here, and there's not one person sitting at this table that does not want what is best for children in the state of Mississippi. I do come from Lee County. My backyard is Etowamba, and my front yard and my house is in Lee. I worked the majority of my time in Etowamba County in the youth court, didn't have a DYS worker, did not have a mental health facility to even refer to. Very, very poor, very good people. And I think we all come from places where there are very good people that lack resources. That is my heart, is that we take all of these children and give them the opportunity to have the same court system from Adams County to all the way to Tupelo, all the way to Pascagoula. And I just want us to remember that, and whatever we phrase ourselves from this point forward, it does not say that we are charged to have a uniform county court system. This topic says uniform youth court system. So I charge everybody to get out of that box and be thinking of creative ways that we can talk about accomplishing goals. And it may be county court, it may not. I don't know. I don't know enough right now. But I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Judge. Yes. And if you'll say your name one more time. I know
Yes, I'm Renee Porter. I'm from Marion County, and I am a youth court referee. But before that, 10 years before that, I was a youth court guardian ad litem. And I think what Commissioner Sanders said and what has been picked up, first of all, we need to gather information. I think that's what Judge Bevel said. We need to gather information. We must do that. And what Commissioner Sanders says is that youth court is specialized work. And I think one of the things that is in our smaller counties that we need to do more of is education, like you said. And even with because you've got your guardian ad litem, you've got your parent representative, you've got those people. We need to, if everybody does their job, these children are going to be protected, okay? Where you're falling apart sometimes is where somebody's not doing their job. And what do we do about that to make sure that everybody is doing their job? And I echo what Judge Martin is saying about the problems we have in smaller counties in keeping youth services workers, in keeping truancy officers. We didn't have a truancy officer all of last year. We finally got one in January of this year, and she filed 78 truancies. But what those 78 truancies told us is we had children. I tell you, the major thing, I didn't realize the problem autistic children have that we didn't know about. They were having these problems until they get reported for truancy. Nobody told us. I can tell you some stories that will just bring tears to your eyes about things that we would not have known about had we not dealt with truancy. So this is not just something where we can say, okay, we're going to create a county court and this is going to be resolved. It's something where there's a lot of different things, and it is, and as Commissioner Sanders says, it is specialized work, and we need to make sure that everybody's educated for their specialized job and they do their job.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner?
Excuse me. I echo what's been said here, and I would bring us back to maybe making some decisions about what information we need to make decisions. I would encourage this group to look at length of stay that children stay in custody in the state by county. Length of stay from the point of adjudication until a permanency plan changes. Length of stay from permanency plan change until they're actually adopted. I was part of a policies and practice workshop yesterday that we led with multiple disciplines from across the state who work with children, particularly in foster care. And we had a panel of people who have lived experience in Mississippi. And by lived experience, I mean they came out of our foster care system. They were between the ages of 17 and they ranged up to 2 mothers who experienced the system. But I had one person talk about spending 10 years in state custody. Another person talk about spending 12 years in state custody. This problem came to my attention when I attended my first mass adoption in Mississippi as a brand new commissioner. And I had children with signs hanging around their necks that said, I've been in custody 4,726 days, to which I quickly did the napkin math. Y'all, we can't leave kids in custody for years. There are no circumstances where that is in the best interest of a child. Well, I take that back. I have a few kids who've been in custody for so long that they're embarking on some career plans or college plans. And at this point, it's better for them to stay and have the benefits we have to offer them. But what I would ask this group to do is get data. I agree. We need to know what the data says. We need to know where it varies by county. And we need to know what's coming out the back end of the system. So I can tell you that anecdotes are not particularly helpful, but when you start hearing the voices of people who've experienced the system in Mississippi, you might be a little bit disturbed. Yes, they are my responsibility, but moving a child out of their parents' custody into state custody and then through the system is an inherently legal process. And it is one that a social worker cannot do without the court. So What I really, what I would really emphasize is that somehow we've got to figure out a way to either take the system we have or improve on the system or build a new system that doesn't keep children in custody that long. And I'll tell you why. On average in Mississippi, it costs $40,000 a year to keep a child in custody. It's a pretty substandard outcome for that kind of money. It also cost us $35,000 a year, somewhere between $35,000 and $45,000 a year every time we lose an employee. Say, what does that have to do with the court? Having expectations that they can follow and know what has to happen in their court has a lot to do with turnover. I've got numbers on turnover by county. So what I'm asking is that we take a look at what we're spending already. And the other final metric I would leave you with is that the state of Mississippi is now embarking on its 19th year in a lawsuit. Olivia Y was 4 when that suit was filed. She is now the age of majority, and we're still fighting that sucker. So it's not improving outcomes for children. We're spending $6 million a year in fees alone, not counting the cost to kids over the last 19 years because we've been head down focused on foster care, which is the subject of the lawsuit, to the detriment of the other parts of the work: intake, investigations, keeping staff and getting salaries where we need to. So while I appreciate the kind words about the work we've done, we're just scratching the surface. I'm just getting my feet under me. It is a big job and it's messy, messy work. So I would just say, let's please arm ourselves with information about what's happening across the state as a whole and not about what's happening only in certain jurisdictions. And absolutely, I think, if we can tighten up rules, if we can look at timeframes, I'm open to suggestions, but I can tell you that what we have right now is not working particularly well across the state as a whole. Oh, I'm sorry, you asked me to talk about Casey Family Programs.
Yes, I was told you were ready to speak on that.
As to gathering information and looking at what works in other states, there's a lot of research out there. There are 2 big fat textbooks that my staff and I are studying diligently. We've gone back to law school. One's called the Red Book and one's called, it's a whole blue book on reasonable efforts. That is some riveting stuff right there. But we do have the opportunity. We work with Casey Family Programs. They fund the work that they do. And I do have some experts who are pulling together information for us on court systems and best practices. So should this group find that that would be helpful, those are resources that we can bring to the table that would not cost additional funds. I do know that this committee has the power, the commission has the power to also ask for other outside research and data. And I think that might be really helpful. But that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. And did you have a date that you spoke with Casey Foundation that you wanted to mention to us, just on to maybe help Chairman Touchstone when we move forward on another committee meeting? Are they ready have they given you a date that they would like to maybe speak with us?
They're finalizing some work that they've been doing over the course of the past year. Chris Church is a man who's worked with he's worked in Mississippi with the judiciary on a number of other projects. He's an attorney, lives down in Florida. And then Melissa Carter runs the Barton Fellowship at Emory School of Law, which is a child welfare specific year-long fellowship. I believe that Mr. Crossley on the Zoom call is actually a Barton Fellow as well. They've been working on this project now for about 8 months. They're wrapping up some of that work in the next week. They will be here in Jackson, Mississippi on October 19th in the afternoon and could make themselves available. I could provide you with written information from their work prior to that, and the group could make a decision about whether or not it's worth your time to come and listen to them. So that's an opportunity we have available.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chairman Touchstone, would you be okay if we tentatively set October 19th, the afternoon, let's say, 1 o'clock? 1 o'clock on October 19th as a meeting time for us to get back together to hear that information?
Be a good idea to go ahead and address that issue. How often do we anticipate calling this commission together so people can plan going forward? Is it going to be as needed, or what is the commission's view on that?
Okay, so I think that's a great idea. What I would like to do, and I think that would be a great topic for us to close on for the day, if that's okay with everyone. I wanted to kind of put a bow on this, as, you know, maybe take a little bit of a benefit of being the chairman today for today's meeting to wrap this up, and then we'll leave that to be the last topic. That'll put us meeting for about an hour and a half today, and I think it's been a very productive meeting. But if I may, and of course, look, if anyone else has any more comments, I don't want you to leave here today without getting those onto the table. Yes, Renee, if you would like to say something.
One thing I do want us to address, and Judge Bevel and I, when we spoke on the phone first, we talked about this, and I see it mentioned in our rural counties, we have a horrific problem with detention centers, with not having, and not that you send a lot of kids to detention, but when it's necessary, when you have a child with a weapon at a graduation and it's necessary for you to do that, we're very limited. Sometimes you cannot get a child in the detention center. We need to deal with that. It's also, it costs now $300 a night for a detention center. That's a problem, and we need to, I just want us to make sure we address that issue.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that comment. So what I want to do is put a bow on our meeting for today. And I do want to thank Commissioner Sanders for getting us together with this meeting and making sure that we were able to meet today. Some of these appointments were probably made a while back. Some of those, like my appointment, was made within the last few weeks that have been a very busy few weeks. And I was not expecting to sit as chairman of a meeting here today, but I think it's been a very productive meeting. And what I want to close by saying is what we need to look at the end from a legislative standpoint. And Representative Owens mentioned that we're going to have issues that come up that we're going to be able to address in the 2024 legislative session, and we don't want to let those go. But we do have a very big undertaking ahead of us here, potentially, to try to make the system better. And when we get to October of 2024, we should have a report, and what that report's going to look like will depend on the data we collect and what we agree upon. We're going to have debates. We're going to, I'm sure we're all not going to agree on things that may be best or not. But at the end of the day, if we stay focused on that report, and what that report is going to be is the recommendation to the legislature. I've seen commission reports the past 4 years that would come to us. Very rarely do we adopt every recommendation that comes out of commission reports. So I think we need to keep that in mind as we move towards preparing this report. We want it to be broken down in a way where, some things we may be able to take on, and instead of trying to eat the whole apple at once, or the whole elephant, some people like to say, we can take small bites here and there to make sure we're moving forward. And we can ask for the commission to be reappointed at the end of October 2024, at which point the legislature can look at that. But I do want to make sure that we come away from here with a very usable report that we're able to look at. And if it's something we can adopt as a whole, if we're able to do that, that's wonderful. But it might not be the case, right? So we want to make our system better. I do think that what we've talked about collecting data early on, and again, of course, this will be up to Chairman Touchstone here, but collecting data is going to be very important. And looking at what other states do is going to be very important. Thinking outside of the box for those of us that are in here, and I'm at an advantage to this because I don't know near as much about the youth court system as you all do. But you know, when we have that kind of experience, we kind of tend to get into the box. And when I first arrived here in the legislature, my least favorite thing to hear was, well, we've always done it this way. And we need to keep that in mind. We need to know that we are going to recommend some changes. And whether we all are going to agree on them or not, we've all got our goals that we want to make this the best system we can. And we have other states to look to see what they do. We have different jurisdictions around our state to look to and try to pull that from there. One of our biggest tasks in the last 4 years was this medical marijuana system that we have. Well, I think, and you know, that's just now getting started, but we pulled from 34 other states to try to pick what worked and what didn't work when we put that together. So I just want to mention that legislatively, when we look at that, we're able to keep things in mind. We don't have to do it the way other states do, but we have those resources. And when it comes to data collecting, I think that's a very good idea for us. I did like the idea that we have a youth court judges commission coming up September 13th to 15th. I think it would be an excellent idea to try to get some sort of survey to them that would say, you know, what do you see that's working? What do you see that's not working? At the very least, to have those two things addressed, and also maybe find out who would like to address the commission at some point or another, because some folks may have things to offer, just like we all have here to do that. I would like to hear from them as a member of the commission. So I think that would be smart. I know that's really, you know, that's coming up really quickly, but if we just keep it simple and allow people to put everything together, we can come together as a commission, and maybe the chairman would want to put a small subcommittee together to pull that information to then report to the commission later on what topics were brought up by the judges at that council, what works, what doesn't work, and so forth. So that is what I wanted to say, kind of to give you an idea of what we look at, because I've seen commission reports. Representative Owens, I've seen commission reports. We know how those work when they're reported to us in committees, and then how they lead to legislation that ends up before us on the floor of the chamber of the House and of the Senate. So if we keep that in mind, I think it will help us pull together the best recommendations that we can lead to good statutes and writing good laws on that. Again, I wanted to stress that sitting here where I've sat today and with the limited amount of knowledge that I have, I can tell that there are a lot of different ideas, some of them conflicting, some of them are agreeing in part and disagreeing in part, and we're going to have that, and that's a good thing. We just have to remember, like Judge Bevel said, one of our states, Judge O'Neill, yeah, one of you ladies mentioned that I think it was Judge Bevel, what we're here for is to make sure that we do the best for our children and for the youth in the state. And we wouldn't be here if we didn't do that. And when we get to debating the way we're going to in this commission, I want to make sure we all do keep that in mind for that purpose. I think that's all that I had that I wanted to kind of say to bring this all into the box here of how this has been such a good productive meeting, the things that have come forth. Now, as to the topic of how often do we meet, before we
as temporary chairman, I'd ask you to address that and our agenda for our upcoming meeting. We need, in order to get anything done, we got to be focused on what we're doing each session. So if you could help address scheduling and an agenda for our next meeting, I can pick up from there.
Yes, certainly. So the next meeting will be October 19th at 1 p.m. So we've got that established. And look, Chairman touched on, I would leave up the next called meetings to you, as we do here in our committees in the legislature. I think that works best. And I understand that if Commissioner Sanders would agree to reach out to the people that you've talked to ask them if they can be here on the 19th. so we can hear from them on what happens. Now, as far as an agenda, I'm going to leave that to the chairman. I think that, of course, it's going to be it seems it's going to be a data collecting type meeting where we can have individuals that know how things happen in other states. And we'll be able, the chairman will recognize individuals from the commission to ask questions of these individuals that are here to speak. So if that group would like to speak from the Casey Foundation, and if there's anyone else that you all know that you would like to reach out to for that day, or if they can fill an hour and a half or 2 hours, we'll just leave it with them is what I would recommend. But I think an agenda, we all have an email, we can get back and forth. And Chairman, I'm happy to help you with that. But I do think that the number one topic on the agenda for October 19th is the Casey Foundation, the experts that are going to be here to speak to us and allow us to ask them questions as to what maybe they see works, doesn't work. And I think that would be a good first, other than this first organizational meeting where we've all been able to speak, that would be a first meeting to get our feet wet, have experts in front of us that we can talk to and move forward. Now, when we get to January, I'm sure you all know we're all here. We'll be here for the legislature. January 2nd should be our first, when the session kicks off. And we'll go, hopefully not through the end of April, but we have the option to go through the end of April with it being the first year of a new term. It kind of gives us time to roll. So we'll be here a lot more. We'll also have access to a lot more folks to talk to during that time. But we will continue to meet through the end of October, I imagine. And maybe at our next meeting, we could try to set a deadline as to when we want to start getting a report drafted. And if we need to get some members from the Capitol here that are on legislative services staff or any other staff members that can help us draft that, we can meet with Peer to find out what they do to get that rolling. But I do eventually see a big report with a lot of different ideas in it that we are going to have to sign off on if it's going to make it into the report, and that will be either the conclusion or our request will be to have the legislature appoint members to the commission again and keep the commission going forward. Are there any other questions or anything? Yes.
I do.
Judge
Is there a
O'Neill?
way that we can meet before October 19th? Because if we're going to have a chance at getting anything in the next legislative session, we probably need to have a meeting in September. My other issue is, this is a really, y'all may be used to this, but this is a real not conducive to really having a conversation, this room. Are there rules about where we can meet, and like, could we meet in a better room that we could really have a conversation? I don't know, maybe everybody else likes it, but it's just kind of weird.
There's a lot.
Better rooms over there?
There's a lot of conference rooms.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I love data and looking at data, statistical data. I'd love to be able to do that with the information that's publicly available, and also information that maybe I could ask permission from AOC to have a different access for purposes of this committee. So I don't know if we need, if that would be a motion to make. I don't know.
On that point, I was thinking, Judge O'Neill, maybe if we all wanted to submit have someone designated clearinghouse to submit, our secretary to you, submit any requests for data that you may think is helpful. And then we could the secretary can submit those to Senator England, Senator Owen. And from there, Representative Owen, determine, if it's
You're dressed like one.
whether it's Peer or AOC, whoever it is, we can kind of decide who can get us that information. But we kind of need one person to be the clearinghouse for that. To send it to y'all.
If I can be the clearinghouse to receive data, request, whatever, so that we can be unified in what we're seeking and who we're seeking it from.
So
How's that?
Judge Secretary O'Neill, would you like to give us your best contact information, email for that so that we can do that? Do we have it? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't get a copy of that sheet. Thank you very much.
That is me.
Okay, great. So we all have each other's information. So Judge O'Neill will be the clearinghouse for us to get information to her about data that we would like. And look, this room, I don't believe that we are charged with streaming our meetings. This one has been streamed online for folks to watch and to listen to. I don't think we have to do that as part of the commission. So Chairman touched on, that will be up to you as far as a meeting place. That's always a chairman, up to the chairman, as well as the agenda. Of course, with your vice chair and secretary can do an agenda there. If we do need to meet before October 19th to come up with anything else, I think that we're all available by email. We all got this one and got together. And if we can't make it, we do have the option to do Zoom, but that's one thing that we are able to do in this room very easily. If we do need to have some folks that aren't going to be here to do Zoom, and we just need to let Carlos know. If you want to let me know if we need that, I can get in touch with Carlos so that we can make sure that we have capabilities to Zoom, have people Zoom in to the meetings for that.
I have a comment too. I wonder if it might be helpful to have somebody from Pure come and talk to us about what their capacity is and what they could help us pull together. Pure. And then I would also offer that I know the courts don't have lots of depth on your staff. I do have some staff who can help with logistics, if that's helpful, Judge Touchstone.
Well, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Okay.
So we'd like to do a September meeting, maybe where Pierre
no.
comes and speaks with us.
The week of the 18th, or what are y'all thinking? I think that's a good idea. What the commissioner said, we could kind of try to gather our data requests by then, and then have them at the meeting, and then we can have Pierre here, AOC, and decide what we do with it.
Would it be the 21st?
I'd rather not Thursdays. That's like my heaviest docket day.
That's why I broached the subject. I know we're all busy and have different obligations. I was wondering if we needed to try to tentatively set a standing meeting date. Otherwise, we're going to have problems with lots of.
Fridays are usually not court days, just for the ones that have to be in courts.
Good idea. All right, I'll set the meeting for September 22nd. Yeah.
Is everybody traveling here? I mean, some folks are coming from distances.
Yeah, let's leave it at 1.
Bob, you and I have a conflict, but we've got other staff we can send.
And we'll try to have, is the goal to have our data requests by then so we can discuss those with the folks that are charged with answering those questions? Okay. Oh, yeah, I just meant Commissioner talked about a lot of data points we're going to need. There's others that Pierre may be able to help with. Just have those requests together by then so we can give them to the folks.
Okay, so that's September 22nd, 1 p.m. And look, that brings up another issue that I want to have us address here, procedural and rules wise for the commission. If a member attends by Zoom, does the commission want to allow them to, 1, count towards the quorum for the meeting, and 2, be allowed to vote on anything in the meeting? I'm
Make a motion.
okay. So the motion is to allow you to count as quorum and vote if you attend by Zoom. Okay, so everyone has heard the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
That judge.
It does, which we,
Robert's rules is probably the easiest. I would make a motion that we follow Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay,
You know,
we have a motion to follow Robert's Rules of Order. We do have a second, which is a Robert's rule. And I will say that I think that's a good idea. And if we can either follow it 100% or at least loosely, which we do here in the legislature, we find that sometimes those of us that want the rules to be followed the most don't understand the rules, but we'll at least, I do think that's a good idea. So the motion is that we adopt Robert's Rules of Order of Procedure for our meetings. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay. The commissioner did have a, do you want to state your motion so that we can maybe discuss this one? I don't know. This one, I think we may need some discussion on, but I do think it was a good point of discussion.
I just wonder if someone can't be present for a particular meeting, do we want to allow them to send a designee and for that person to have the same voting and voice privileges?
And I would like to comment on that. And my only comment would be if your position on the commission is as a agency, I think that may be okay, but I wonder if those of us that were appointed, particularly, for instance, I wouldn't want to send a designee because I was appointed directly, same with Representative Owens. So I don't know how that would work. Representative Owens, you have a comment? Okay, great. So exactly. So I don't, would you like to withdraw your motion? I guess we've got it spoken to.
I never follow Robert's
I
rules.
know, right?
I believe in anarchy.
I know.
It really wasn't so much a motion as a
So
question, but thank you.
But I would ask that those of you that statutorily can provide a designee, if you'll let the chairman know ahead of time who may be there, just so we do keep that, especially if they're going to be attending by Zoom. I would think the chairman would like to know exactly who that designee will be for those agencies that are able to send a designee. Is there any other business that anyone would like to bring up for the commission for this first, what I think has been a very productive meeting today?
Other
Yes,
than,
Judge O'Neill.
can everybody kind of tell what spot they're filling? Because I think that's maybe obvious in some cases, but on the list of, does it say on this handout? Okay, never mind.
Yes, Representative Owens.
The statute also provides search director.
Okay, so I guess our old business that we will be looking at the next meeting will be who would like to step up and maybe be research director, which will be a very important job, I imagine, very early on in this commission's process. So just be thinking of that. Chairman-elect touched on, is there anything you would like to add before the end of the meeting? Okay, if there are no other comments, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn for this, for today. All right, all in favor of adjournment, say aye. Any opposed? Thank you, everybody. Have a safe trip back home.